actually have good news in the housing market for a freaking change. Can you believe it? There's a few things I want to talk about. First, we're going to talk about the declaration of a housing emergency from the administration. So we're going to be talking about that. We're also going to be talking about interest rates. We're also going to be talking about, what was the other thing, Eddie? There was another good thing that I wanted to talk about. Oh, if you're applying for a home loan, that's what it was. If you're applying for a home loan right now, we actually have some good news for you. So we got a lot of things to cover this week. I know a bunch of people are like really into football right now. So I'm sure some of you are watching the football game. My husband actually has one football game going on in his ear while he's watching another one and running the stream. So we're still going to make it happen. If you
I do not have that headphone in my ear. I'm sorry.
Okay. If you happen to have a question during the stream, you type the word question first so Eddie can put it on the screen. Eddie happens to be the little producer in the background. That's the voice you hear in the background. He also happens to be my husband. So if I call him honey, sweetie, sugar, love, muffin, any of those things, it's because we're married. Anyway, I hope everybody's having a fantastic week. It's great to see Lawnmower and MH08 and King in the City, the first in the chat this week. And yeah, drumming fingers on deck. Yes, I am doing a little bit of drumming fingers. Yeah, I'm always dancing. I can't help myself. Should I do a little at one time in my life, I thought I could break dance. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the first article talking about the housing emergency and how the Trump administration is going to handle this housing emergency. As you know, that we've had an extensive amount of a problem with finding affordable housing throughout the United States. So, this is what the headlines read from Realtor.com. It says Trump considers declaring a national housing emergency this fall. So what does that actually mean when he declares this? Because, we can all declare everything. Remember, did anybody ever watch Office? What is it? The Office? And he was like, I declare. Anyways, the Trump administration is considering a housing emergency measures to address the housing affordability crisis that has left millions struggling to pay rent and priced out of home ownership. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said on Monday, we declare a national housing emergency in the fall. We're trying to figure out what we can do and what we don't want to step into the business of states, counties, and municipal governments. Bessent declined to list any specific actions under the consideration by the president, but said administration officials are studying ways to decrease closing costs, nationally standardize the local patchwork of building and zoning codes. So if you don't know anything that has to do with real estate, it always comes down to building more. And a lot of that, what cripples building is zoning laws. So I'm sure they're going to address that. Go ahead and scroll down a little bit more, Eddie, please, if you could. All right. In a separate Labor Day interview with Reuters, Bessent said that solving the housing affordability crisis was an all-hands-on-deck challenge for Trump administration. In the Oval Office press conference on Tuesday, President Trump confirmed an emergency declaration on housing affordability under consideration without offering any specifics. A spokesperson for the White House and the Treasury Department did not immediately respond to questions from Realtor.com about the declaration of the national housing emergency might entail. MH08 said it might mean that rents are going up. Well, we'll see. Talk of the emergency measures comes at a time when Americans face the deepest struggles of affordable housing, relative income, home affordability in a nearly 40-year low, and nearly half of its renter households are cost burdened, spending more than 30% of their income on rent. And you know that if you watch this for my live streams for quite some time, you know that the rents actually are about 42% of people's incomes are going towards rent. I know that this says 30, but we know because we've looked at many other statistics, and it's actually 42%. Berner suggests that that finding ways to streamline the permitting process for home builders, put fewer restrictions on home builders, could boost housing supply, particularly in heavily regulated, high-cost areas in the Northeast. Well, what about the West? They've got building permits. Like California has the biggest permitting issue ever when it comes to building houses. This would have the biggest long-term impact on the federal government. Could also juice up the housing market in a short term, but make it easier to buy a home. This may include a tax credit to offset closing costs. And a similar tax credit offered for first-time home buyers during the Obama administration in 2008, when income economy entered into the deep recession. However, the tax required act of Congress, and it's unclear whether the executive branch could do a similar step on its own. The National Association of Realtors says that it's close contact with the White House and engaged. Engaged on ongoing discussions on particular solutions to expand the opportunity. Okay, so here's one of the other things they're going to do is, so they're going to loosen up or try to figure out the patchwork of zoning. So, like we have single family housing, we have multifamily housing, we have like all these zoning issues. And so they're trying to make that not as bad. So some people have suggested getting rid of single family housing altogether, because they say this is what caused the spread of as many neighborhoods as they are. And it's like, they say we should be more concentrated and have more people living in smaller plots of land. Now, I get that makes sense for places like New York, where you have a larger density of people, and single family houses don't necessarily make sense in, like New York City. But if you live in a place like I do, like Baton Rouge, there is plenty of land to build single family housing. And the permitting process could be tailored down. But another thing they're saying that they're going to reduce, and they already have with the big, beautiful bill, is they're going to stop requiring certain things being done to houses to make them more energy efficient. I don't think that's a good idea. Like, we're already seeing what's going on with energy bills as it is. So you're going to tell builders they don't have to blow as much like insulation in the attic, or they don't have to put radiant barrier in the attic, or you're telling them that they don't have to seal it necessarily properly because there's nobody inspecting this to make the house more energy efficient. Bad ruling on my end, like how I feel about it. And the biggest track builders are already in trouble for building really, really crappy homes. So you're going to give them less regulations to build even crappier homes. I don't like that. I don't like that one bit. Now, tax incentives, which I've already said a million times over, would be a great solution. I would love for this administration to start really looking into and investing into modular constructed builders, because they can build them faster. They can build them in a environmentally controlled factory. So you could have houses built one right after another and place them on top of each other. If you didn't want single family housing and you wanted to build two houses or side by side, modular home companies can do that, and they can crank out some houses. I talked to one guy. He's like, I could do 200 houses a month if I wanted to. 200 houses a month. Not many people could do that. And the thing is, it's like a concentrated workforce, because they always complain that we don't have enough of a workforce to build as many houses, and that it's actually shrinking, and it's been shrinking a lot more in the past year. So, okay, now you have a concentrated workforce that doesn't have to be out in the elements. They have a lot less turnover rate because they're coming back to the same factory every single week to build these houses. I hope that that's in their plan, but the Trump administration doesn't ask me. Little old me, little girl on YouTube, but whatever. I think it's a great idea if we do that. There was something else in that article after that. So we have a comment here. It says, is more likely, it's more like finally Trump acknowledges what was evident in his first term. I don't even think it was really that evident. Matter of fact, like when I'm gonna play, both sides of the fence here on this one, because when he was in office, we still had a lot of available housing. It wasn't until the pandemic that the housing crisis got out of control, like way out of control. I mean, don't get me wrong, we still had private equity buying up housing, but not at the rate that they were when the money was cheap. When the money was cheap during the pandemic, man, they went buck wild because they were just going to buy as much as they could. That's why they were buying them at face value, if not more, because they were trying to buy up as much as they could. The housing didn't go up until the pandemic went into full force. And, they were doing it because the money was like they could borrow money on a very, very cheaply. And of course they were going to do it. I warned of this happening, though. I had warned about it before the pandemic started, and people told me I was crazy. I warned about it mostly through manufactured home parks or mobile home parks, whatever you want to call it. I said it was going to happen there first, which it did. And now we have more and more corporate landlords that are running mobile home parks and pricing people out of those, evicting them even. So it happened exactly the way I said it was going to. And it's going to keep creeping into single family dwellings. They love to mention that single family housing isn't, it's only owned by 1% of corporate landlords, but that's not true. It's over 1%. It's almost 2% now. It was 1% before the pandemic. Now it's almost 2%. 2% of the housing market is owned by corporate landlords. And we're talking private equity firms. And not on top of that, it's all concentrated in certain areas. So they dictate what happens to the housing market. They're not doing anything to address that. Every bill that's ever been sent to the House, to the Senate, all these politicians that like campaign on it and they get all this bipartisan support, it never even hits the House floor or the Senate floor to even be looked at or talked about or discussed or anything. It's writing on a piece of paper to make voters feel like, oh, my senator, my congressman is doing something. Total horse crap. It's just because they pay for their campaigns. So of course, anyways. Yeah.
So Savassi over on TikTok says hello from Pennsylvania.
Hello from Pennsylvania. We're going to be moving there. We're moving to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, here we come. Right back where we started from. So, Eddie, can you bring that article back up, please? I got on a tangent there. Sorry, I can't help myself sometimes.
And Trep says Trump's about to bring back the product.
Okay, let's go ahead. It says, if the national emergency is declared, NAR stands ready to work closely with the administration, Congress, and state and local leaders to advance their targeted reforms and increase inventory, improve affordability, and keep home ownership within reach. Thanks, Shannon. That's Shannon from NAR. Okay. The administration's consideration of the housing emergency underscores the urgency we've long raised about supply constraints and the greatest obstacle, affordability, with the homes nation's short about 4.7 million homes. Bold, coordinated action is needed now to boost housing supply so more families can achieve the American dream of home ownership and generational wealth that it provides. On the first day of his current term, President Trump ordered an executive branch to deliver an emergency price relief for Americans on housing costs and key living expenses. In the memorandum to head its executive department's agency, Trump directed them to take action to lower the cost of housing and expand housing supply, as well as reduce the other household expenses to boost employment. A memo ordered the executive branch leaders to report back to the White House in 30 days with their progress in lowering customer costs, but it made no reference to specific actions taken. I can honestly tell you to do anything with your house currently is a lot more expensive than it was even 30 days ago. Since the administration has moved forward with its plans to identify federal land that could be opened up for affordable housing projects, the legislative branch bill packed with provisions aimed to boost housing supply and lower housing costs has gained bipartisan support in the Senate, passing out of the committee unanimously last month. A full Senate vote on the bill has yet to be scheduled. Known as the Road to Housing Act of 2025, the bill would create a best practices framework for local and zoning land use, which could be copied and implemented by local jurisdictions at their discretion. As the housing crisis featured predominantly in 2024 presidential election, with the Democratic candidate Harris touted plans for offering $25,000 down payment assistance to certain first-time home buyers. Trump also promised that to address the housing crisis in a campaign trail, vowed to slash regulations and home builders, and saying he would get more mortgage rates down to 3% or less. Mortgage rates have remained above 6.5%, but they're actually lower than that now. Since Trump took office in January, and the president to level its bitter recriminalization against the Federal Reserve for leaving its policy unchanged. The Fed is now widely expected to cut the benchmark rate by a quarter point later this month, which could lead mortgage rates down to its lowest level this year at 6.5 last week, according to Freddie Mac. But they're actually lower than that. Interest rates are lower than that right now. And that's good news if you're on the fence of buying a house. But the other thing that is way down is jobs. And what have I always said? People that have watched this stream a million times, what have I said? The only way that home prices were going to start tanking is if we saw what? Jobs start going in the toilet. And, you know, I've never been a fan of the jobs report. I have said this for, I don't know, 3-4 administrations now. Like, the jobs report has not been ever right for eons now, because they changed how they said that somebody was looking for a job. If you're no longer taking unemployment benefits, you're no longer on that. You're like in the ether. You don't exist as a person trying to look for a job, even though you are. You know, like they just say that you don't exist unless you're trying to find a job and you're collecting unemployment. Even though you, like, once you're off of that, that's it. You know, they don't consider you looking for a job anymore. Stupid, right? But they only created about 22,000 jobs last month, and they revised their previous report. And then I think that is going to reflect, if more and more people start losing their jobs, that means they can't pay for their mortgages. And then as more people can't pay for their mortgages, more people are going to be forced to sell. We are seeing an increase of supply of houses being listed for sale, but what's precluding people, stopping people from actually purchasing right now is interest rates. But because of that news, interest rates decided to make a turn. They just said, you know what? This doesn't look good for the economy. So they went ahead and started coming down. Mortgage interest rates are not the same as the federal funds rate. So mortgage rates are always moving up and down every single day. And what happens in the market does reflect mortgage rates. So we saw a little dip on Friday, and they are now at 6.29%, 6.29. And I thought they were going to go up. I honestly thought that we would see mortgage interest rates up. So I was wrong. I was wrong. All right. The average rate on the 30-year fixed rate mortgage dropped to 16 basis points to 6.29% on Friday. This is a major change from May, when the rate was a 30-year fixed rate peak at 7.8%. Home builder stocks like Lennar, D.R. Horton, Pullet gained ground. So people are like, they're investing in those bigger, more affordable housing. Lennar is actually making a house that is an apartment within the house. So the upstairs is for, you know, like the main part of the family. And then they have the whole downstairs, which normally would be just an average basement. Well, they're building it where it's not a basement, it's an apartment. So I bet you're going to see a lot more of those. Proud Liberal 24 has a question. Are the Crash Bros finally correct after 3 years of saying the sky is falling? Oh, 3 years. You're giving them credit. The Crash Bros have been saying it was going to crash since 2020. So that is how many years? 5 years. Yeah. I understand a crash, but well, I'm not even saying anything's going to crash. What I'm saying is that home prices will adjust. We'll start seeing them fall, right? But I don't think they're ever going to be falling as much as people will want them to be, mostly because what happened in 2008, when we had the last financial crash, is home builders were building more homes than they ever had in history. And when it all fell apart and the party was over, there was a ton of vacant homes across the United States that needed to get sold. So the whole reason we even got into this mess with private equity was the bank said, hey, private equity firm, we have all these vacant houses. We need them off our books. You know, we got the bailout. Can you take this dead weight off of us? And they went, you know what? Maybe we can. And they put lipstick on the pig and started renting them out. It seemed like a good thing at the time. And then it turned into like you basically fed the monster, because then they realized how much money they can make off of people by doing very little, and especially in like mobile home parks, right? So that's what really started that whole snowball effect of private equity into single family housing. They started with mobile home parks. They got a big windfall with all those houses in '08. And then all of a sudden, now they're doing it again. And, it's just not a good thing. But we don't have that supply of housing today. That's why I don't think in a lot of areas where they probably did take a hit in '08, they may not take a hit this next time around if we have still a declining jobs numbers and market coming in. Like if we start seeing a crumbling of the economy, it's not going to go down as much as people are hoping for or expecting. Because of the shortage of supply, we just don't have enough houses. We have like 4.7 million is what they said in that article. It's closer to like 5 to 6 million. So we need that many houses, and they're not building them, and they haven't been building them for the last almost 12 years because builders are not willing to take that risk, and I don't really blame them. And then when they were trying to build as much during the pandemic, they were about to go all balls to the walls, but they couldn't because there wasn't enough building materials for them to go crazy like that, to build as many houses as they wanted to. You're seeing a lot of the bigger builders right now kind of having to step back and fix a lot of those houses they built during the pandemic because they built them so fast. They didn't build them right. And they're getting themselves into a lot of lawsuits, some of them class action, by the way. SS says, question, will it be cheaper to build a home or buy one already built and upgrade? Our family is looking to build our forever home in the next 6 months or so. I would price it out in your area. Currently, it is less expensive to buy a house than to build a house, unless you go with one of those tract builders. But when you're going with a tract builder, know that you're going to be in a neighborhood. You're going to be in a neighborhood. It is more expensive to privately build your house than it is to fix up an old one. So, and it depends on how much you got to do to that old house too. If you're talking about structural beams and rebuilding it from the bottom up, then you might as well just tear it down and start all over. You have to price that out with a contractor. Noreen says, why wasn't this addressed during the big, beautiful bill? I don't know. I'm not a politician. I don't know. There was a lot of things that were left out of that bill. There was a lot of things. Housing affordability has been an issue for many administrations, and they all say the same thing. It's almost like they take it, and before even ChatGPT was a thing, like they ran it through ChatGPT and say, this is going to be our administration's, goal to address this. They never address it because the problem is that we haven't built enough. And in order for them to build enough, they have to work with the first part of it is the first layer of it is the land development, that chain of events they have to do to develop a piece of land in order to turn it into a neighborhood takes years, and it's completely unnecessary. If they could streamline that process, that would help immensely. The other thing is that for some reason politicians don't invest in true modular home companies. I'm not talking about the big names that you think of. I'm talking about just the mom and pop modular home builders. Those modular home builders, those mom and pop ones, could crank out some houses, but nobody thinks of them as a viable source because they're like, oh, they're junk. No, they're not. They're actually built better, in my opinion, than most traditional homes. That traditional house that you just see on the street is the same thing as a modular home. It just so happens that the pieces were built in a factory. They have the same building code, if not better than your local building code. So I don't know why they don't address it this way. I think they should, but builders are very slow on the uptake in order to make things more modern. Like, unless they're forced to do it, they're not going to do it. They would never do any kind of green energy, anything, but because they were forced to do it, they had to. It takes them forever to decide to do anything. They'll change a paint color, but to actually change something in their building, absolutely not, unless they're forced to. So, if that's how I think that needs to be addressed. And politicians don't understand that. They don't understand anything about home building. You know, they don't know. They're just like, oh, we're just going to make it easier for them to build houses. They don't know what they're voting on. They're just voting because somebody paid them to vote that way. All right. Most renters in Florida are spending over 50% of their income for rent. See, just Cruising Mom knows what I'm talking about. On average, it's 42%. Oh, we got a $10 super chat. Yay! Super chat. Thank you. Kristina, please note our conversation from 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, the FHA and VA lender HOA questionnaires will likely still affect first-time home buyers. Your thoughts? Okay, so it depends on the HOA. I wish I would have looked into this more. I'm sorry, I did not. When it comes to HOAs, I know that some HOAs, especially in condominiums, especially when it comes to FHA and VA, condos are not a thing. They're not going to allow for them anymore. It's very difficult to get a loan with an FHA loan for a condo. So I would put that out there, but I don't even consider, like, whenever I talk about affordable housing, you never see not one video from me about condos. Because to me, condos are not affordable, mostly because it might be affordable for the time that you purchase them, but condo homeowners assessments and dues that come up usually price people out of the market at some point, because they keep rising and rising and rising to the point where that becomes unaffordable. And I mean, Florida is a perfect storm to analyze. And if you have a young family or you're single and you're like, well, I just don't want to take care of a yard, and condos seem to be the way to go, and it's cheaper than buying a house, it's not going to be cheaper for you in the long run. I promise you that. I would look for something else other than a condo. That's just my personal opinion, though. Don't take my word for it and price it out. But I don't consider condos an affordable housing option, not one bit. MH08 says this will fade into the background noise in about 2 weeks. Are you talking about the housing emergency? He's gonna declare it in the fall. That we have to say it's probably gonna be in 2 weeks. You just gotta wait 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks, and he's gonna declare it. I declare bankruptcy. You guys remember that from The Office? The guy was like, I declare bankruptcy. That's not how it works, by the way. JA says, question, of all the things are great ideas, but what can be done about prices of homes going up faster than income? Currently, there's nothing that we can do to stop home prices doing what they're doing. The way that the world works, and everybody loves to blame real estate agents for the cost of housing, but I mean, they have a very small part in it. I'm going to give you a perfect example. I just listed a house that I felt was above the market value. I told the sellers, I believe this is above the market value. They said, fine, I'm going to put it up for this price, and I'm not willing to sell it for less than that. And I said, okay. And then sure enough, I put the house on the market. We do a fantastic video. I market it, and sure enough, we get a contract on it, and they pay full price. They paid full price for this house in the market that we're in today. That had nothing to do with me. That's what the buyers were willing to pay for it. Until we have enough buyers unwilling to pay the prices of homes today, then we'll see a reflection on home prices coming down. But until that happens, we're going to continue to see home prices continue to go up. There's no law that can dictate how much the market can sell a house for. I wouldn't want the government to tell me I can't sell my house for more than 10% of what I purchased it for. I wouldn't want that. I wanted the market to dictate what prices are going to be. That's how the home prices tanked into the ground in 2008, because there wasn't enough home buyers to buy as many homes as there was sellers. So eventually the market corrected itself and home prices started to tumble. We could see that again in some markets where there is an excess amount of supply. But if we start seeing mortgage interest rates going down even more, I'm going to tell you, you're going to see a lot more people entering the market because a lot of sellers were unwilling to sell because they were like, I have a 2.9% interest rate. Why would I sell? I'll just stay in my small house. If we start seeing interest rates go down, we're going to see an increase of people trying to scoop up those more affordable housing. And if that happens, you're going to see home prices go up again. Yikes. I know. It sucks. Sucks, I tell you. The digital artist says homeless numbers are worse than the Great Depression. And I believe it. And I believe it because I talked about this earlier. We saw an increase of private equity buying up housing in mobile home parks, right? Those people are on fixed incomes. They were low fixed income individuals, right? They are people that this is the only house that they could afford. The last affordable housing option. It was even less expensive than renting an apartment in their area. And some of them had living there for more than 20 years. And their rents for their lot, because they're only renting the land because the house belongs to them, was well within their reach. Then the price of food went up. Then the price of their medications went up. Then private equity came in and bought out their home park. And they were in a situation where they couldn't find anything else. They couldn't sell their house because nobody was purchasing, a 25-year-old mobile home, right? And then they couldn't afford the rent. So some of them were making a decision like, do I go ahead and feed myself or do I take my medication? And they were like cutting their medications in half just to be able to afford the rent. And the people that own those parks, the private equity firms, they don't care. And they know that they're going to leave their house that they paid for. They know that they're going to leave it, right? So the next thing they do is that person has now out of their home. They have nowhere to go and they're living out of their car. The house that they paid for that didn't belong to them that belonged to them in the first place is now gone. They can't take it anywhere else because it's 25 years old and they can't find somebody else to move it to a new park. And the new parks are just as expensive as the one that they're leaving. So they leave that house there and the private equity firm comes in, gives it a repaint, puts in some new appliances and rents it out for double the price. So they got a free house with free rent. They made somebody homeless and they do not care. They do not care. And that's what they're going to continue to do with single family housing. I know a lot of these private equity firms thinks they got something great, but they don't take care of things in the long term. They do things on the short term. So everything always looks good within those first couple of years that they own it. And then after somebody's been living there for 5 years, things start going bad. There's a problem with the plumbing. They don't come out and fix it in time. There's a problem with the roof. They don't start fixing it. So we're going to see an increase of dilapidated homes. And they're not owned by homeowners. They're owned by private equity firms. And the private equity firms do not care. They just don't care. So yeah, we're going to see a lot more homeless. And they're even talking about like people are always like, oh, those big cities are the ones that have the homeless problem. That's not true. In rural areas, they have an extreme number of homeless people. And they're living out in the woods and all these other places so they don't get caught. There's more and more people living out of their cars. And they're working, by the way. These are working people that are now homeless. But because they can't make enough money for the rent in the area, they are now homeless and they live out of their car or they're living out in the woods in a tent. It's so crazy to me. Lee says the dollar is dropping in value from a year ago. Mostly affects people in buying in other countries and other foreign buyers who want to buy in the United States can get more for their money. Yes. Yeah. But we're not seeing as many people coming in. So Mona says, question, I need to refinance my 7% rate. Is it better to wait until next year to see how low the rates can go? What would you do? If you're at a 7 and it's 6.29, I wouldn't refinance now, but that's just me. I would talk to a lender first. But my whole thing is like, for me personally, I needed to be a percentage, 1.5% or 2% before I refinance. That's how I look at it for myself. But I would always talk to a lender first and find out your financial situation if you need to do something like that, or if you're getting some of your equity out of your house to cover some other bills. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons why you would need to refinance. So talk with them first, but I wouldn't do it now. I don't think that's enough of a drop. Not only that, you're gonna have to still pay closing costs. So Charlton Zimmerman says, question, are housing built after 2004 better because of the ICC codes were adopted nationally? More of a question for you, Eddie Teddy. They want to know your opinion because you were a roofer. Eddie, back in the day, we used to be a roofer. Eddie's had many careers. Eddie was at one time a police officer too. Eddie, you're gonna chime in?
So are they asking for our houses built after 2024?
2004. Are they better?
2024. Yeah, 2004. I'm sorry. Because
Yes.
ICC codes. I would. The codes are better, but I don't know if the materials are.
I would say that it allowed for uniformity across the country.
Correct.
So I would say that's better because you
Correct.
wouldn't.
I just don't know if the materials are. That's where I kind of go into this. Like, yeah, the codes might have made it better because there was uniformity, but the materials that we're using, are they actually even better?
Do you remember when everybody was spray foaming their roofs? So like there was this big kick on spray foam. Everybody was spray foaming their attics, right? Because they were so much more energy efficient and people's bills were coming down. But if you happen to live in a high humidity area, that you had to use the correct kind of spray foam. And not only that, that spray foam started weighing on people's decking units in their attic. I don't know how many people I've heard of that had to scrape out all that spray foam, that it wasn't great in the roofing system at all. And it caused massive problems with the moisture. I think a lot of building materials come and go over time. They all sound good at the beginning, but I'm always one of those people like, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait a minute. Oh, and by the way, speaking of waiting a minute, if you get a text message or any kind of person knocking on your doors telling you that they can help you lower your energy bills because there's some kind of federal grant that's being delivered and that will bring down the cost of solar panels, run. Those solar panel companies are banking that you don't understand. There is no federal money. There is no state money. There is nothing there that's going to help you with the cost of paying for those solar panels. Not only that, you're renting the equipment that they use. Now, another thing you need to know is a lot of companies, electric companies, are no longer buying back your electricity. So, having that buy back your electricity, they're not doing it. So I know that you want to save money on your electric bills. You would be better off buying your own panels and having somebody install them than going with a solar company that's going to install them. Another thing you need to be aware of too is if you have a brand new house and you put solar panels on your roof, it could stop your whole warranty on your roof. Like as soon as those solar panels go up, now it negates the 30-year warranty that you had for your shingles and your roof. So just be very careful when you're dealing with anything solar. Do not listen to some guy knocking on your door to sell you solar panels because he's gonna tell you the way to get it for free. There's not a damn thing in this world that's free today. And those solar panel companies prey on people's desperations for lower bills. So do not fall for it. There is no free. There is no federal money out there for free solar panels. There's no state money out there for free solar panels. I've seen it here in this state so many times. Some real estate transactions got canceled because the buyer was not interested in buying the solar panels that they were renting. And in order for it to get sold, the buyers had to buy the solar panels unless the sellers were willing to come out of the money what they owed for it. So it was like $20,000. Some of them did it though. Some of them took it out of the equity that they had in their house just to get it sold. And of course they don't want them back. So now the buyer's got a free solar panel system. Don't do it. Don't do it unless you're going to do it yourself.
What happens if somebody knocks on your door and say they can cut your cost for your garbage pickup?
Shut up, Eddie. Eddie and I just got free garbage pickup.
Just asking for
Yeah, hush, 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 hush. Yeah, Eddie's throwing me under the bus. I got suckered in, but I did get free trash pickup. So, all right. So, according to Dan in the Dirt, it says, according to the government, they're all drunks and druggies who don't want to work. Are you talking about the working homeless? Yeah, I know. And that's a conversation that I have many times because a friend of mine and I were just discussing about the, how many houseless people there are. And she told me, she goes, they want to be homeless. Like that really burned my rear end. So I started pulling up statistics. I'm like, do you realize that like 20% of those people that are homeless, that want to be homeless, are veterans? And then another like 4% of those are single moms who are getting out of like abusive relationships. And so they're homeless because they got kicked out of the house in some way, shape, or form. They're considered now homeless. And a lot of them are working. They have jobs, but they have nowhere to live because it's too expensive. So yeah, I know. I hate that. Like, oh, the homeless people want to be homeless. What the hell are you talking about? What the hell are you talking about? Now, I'm not saying there isn't a portion of people that are out there that, yes, this is a way of life for them, but that's not the majority of them. Give me a break. Give me a break. Eddie, let's share some good news, though, after Muddy Sneakers question. If all appliances, windows, doors, light bulbs are energy efficient, why does my electric bill never go down? Insert sarcasm. Well, my electric bill went up, what was it, Eddie? $127, and we didn't use any more energy. But you know what brought up that cost?
I'm sorry, 179.
179 went up $179 in 1 month with no additional like usage. This was the same usage that we've always used. Data centers. They're putting so many here in Louisiana. And guess who has to pay for those data centers' electricity? It's not the data center. It's us, the people that live here. Isn't that complete BS? But they want more companies to come to Louisiana. So they give them these sweetheart deals where they don't have to pay for the electricity. They don't have to pay for the water, but someone's got to pay for it. So you might as well dish it out to the people that are, live here. All the taxpayers, people that have electricity, we're going to put it on your bill. So we can have this new company, give them the incentive to be here in Louisiana. I don't know how this is helping our economy, but I don't make the rules. Again, I don't make the rules. People are pissed. There was a lady that was on the news. She lives in a manufactured house, a mobile home. Her electric bill was $500. $500. How does that make even sense? That doesn't even make sense. Yep. So anyways, let's get into the good news. Let's talk about some good news. Good news in the market. It says Trump signs a Home Buyers Privacy Protection Act ending abusive trigger leads. So anybody who's ever filled out a form on the internet saying, hey, I'd love to get a quote. Somebody was asking about refinancing their house. Bipartisan, everybody is on board on this, by the way. They're going to stop that from happening. So as soon as you fill out that form, you get 5,000 phone calls. They start harassing your emails. They start harassing your place of work because you filled out that form asking just to get a quote on how much like a house would be with the new interest rate. Like you're just asking for information, and then they sell your data to all these like all these different brokerage firms, and you're getting bombarded with phone calls. It's absolutely ridiculous. And they'll sell that data to like home warranty companies. They sell it to other mortgage brokers, and they'll sell it to lawn care companies, alarm systems instantaneously. And you're like, it's like your number has been put on a bathroom wall. Everybody's calling you. Well, they just signed a bill. This is a good one. They're going to stop all that. Bipartisan law puts guardrails on the sale of your borrower data, reshaping competition for mortgage brokers and loan officers. Donald Trump has signed a bipartisan Home Buyers Privacy Protection Act into law, officially curbing the controversial practice of selling mortgage trigger leads. The legislation, authorized by Representatives John Rose and Richie Torres, received an overwhelming bipartisan support, which is very rare these days, clearing Congress with ease before reaching the president's desk. House Financial Service Committee praised the enactment. I'm pleased to see that President Trump has signed the bipartisan Home Buyers Protection Act into law. And also want to say thank you to Representative. Oh, we're all kissing each other's butt. I don't want to read that. What does the law do? Go to that. I don't want to hear about them, smooching each other because they did a good job. What does the law cover? When a prospective home buyer applies for a mortgage, it is a trigger to the sale of the personal information to other lenders, often without their knowledge or consent. This practice is known as a trigger lead. It also has been long criticized by the mortgage professionals and customer advocates alike. I think it's stupid. I hated that. The new law puts guardrails around the sale of trigger leads, limiting how and when personal financial data can be shared. Industry leaders say this represents a major win for both buyers and mortgage professionals who serve them. The bill passed the House Financial Service Committee and not unanimously, 46-0. Wow, that's rare. On June 10th, 2025. The House Representatives voted by voice on June 2023. And then on August 2nd, with Trump's signature on September 5th, now becomes law. So this is law. So if this starts, if you fill out a form today and you start getting all those phone calls, start documenting who's doing those phone calls, and then take it to your state because they can sue them. They can sue them for selling your data. And then you can get some little list. I mean, a win is a win as far as I'm concerned. Money Steaker says 33% are druggies, 33% want to be homeless, 33% homeless not by choice. Those are your personal statistics there. PB, facts and honesty, greed mongers, thievery, and by crooks hijacking the U.S. So many liars, BS scams out there. I'd like to just say, and I think this often when I'm heading to sleep, this is what I think about as I'm closing my eyes. I feel like everything's a scam. Everything's a scam. You buy homeowners insurance. It doesn't cover half of what you need when you need it. There's someone trying to screw you out of the money that you deserve when you've been paying homeowners insurance for years. Same thing when you get your car, a car insurance. Something happens, I realize it's the home insurance or the car insurance company's, way to make as much money as possible. But when you've been paying for years, what's the point of boning people? Think about the CEOs, think about the shareholders. It makes you feel like, oh my God. And then God forbid you're sick. Now, everything in the healthcare industry feels like a scam. In order to go to one doctor, you have to go to your general practitioner first and pay that fee. Then you got to go to the other doctor and pay that fee. And then you pay for that fee, and then that fee, and then you're paying for insurance. The insurance is supposed to cover these fees. I remember a time when you didn't have to have the copay, and now you have copays for everything. Everything feels like a scam. Everything feels like a scam. Every time I walk out of my door, everything's over $100. This is why I'm afraid to leave my house, because no matter what I do, it's always over $100. And I'm buying stuff that I need. It isn't like I'm, throwing money around everywhere. I'm literally need this stuff. And I don't know. Everything feels like a scam. Thank you for that comment. You went and let me go on a tirade about how we're all getting boned here in the United States. But we're not the only country, though, by the way. I put out a YouTube short. Every single country is going through the exact same thing with the housing crisis and rents and a housing shortage. It's in Australia, it's in Scotland, and it's in the UK. I mean, it's like, it's eerily weird because you listen to their news reports and they sound exactly like us. Ugh. Quantitative disease. Wow. Did the Genius Act give funding to and incentivize tech companies to make data centers in the US? Yeah. I don't know. I don't know, but it seems like everywhere there is a closer data center, they have noise complaints, they have pollution complaints. That AI is not, I don't think the AI right now is a benefit to humanity. I think it's a net negative, but I could be wrong. I think it's making people dumber because people can't even make general decisions on anything until they consult their chat GPT. It's ridiculous. The government is helping to increase the cost of electricity. Well, I'm not like big on, like, I'm not an expert in this, but there is a creator. His name's Mr. Global, and he's in the oil and gas industry. And he told us a year ago, he had said to his subscribers a year ago, this was coming down the line. He told us that we're going to be seeing higher electric bills across the country where you saw these data centers. And there's other reasons for it too. And he said that if you live in the Northeast, that you're going to see some staggering electric bills this year because of how much natural gas was sold off to other countries. Our natural gas that we have an abundance of, by the way, we sold it off to other countries. And so it's going to make our natural gas here very expensive. All right. Tommy says, question, can we as private citizens sue them and make them pay for their evil? If we can get a group of people on the same page to go after these companies, it takes time, but yeah, it absolutely can be done. It can be. You just got to get enough people willing to fight with you. One voice is very tiny, but if you have a bunch of whiny boy voices, lots of them, then it becomes the squeaky wheel gets the oil kind of thing. Yeah, it can be done.
Savasi on TikTok says, born and raised in Greece, and my taxes every paycheck was 52%, including healthcare insurance. By the way, my pay a day was $5 a day, including taxes.
Yeah, I don't think people would feel as crippled here in the United States if health insurance wasn't tied to employment. Because if you don't have employment or you have an employer that doesn't carry health insurance, you're on your own. And to cover yourself as a single insurer with insurance companies is brutal. So a lot of people try to just wing it and pay out of pocket. But God forbid something happens to you that's going to cost you, could ruin your life. But even people with insurance have their lives ruined because of some health emergency. They get cancer and the breadwinner of the family can no longer, work full time because they're going through treatments. And so the whole family suffers. Many people lose their houses. They lose their, their cars, everything. They go bankrupt because of medical costs. It's absolutely disgusting. Nolly says, question, we received tons of phone calls from so many real estate agents after our contract to sell our home with another agent ended. How does that happen? And that also needs to end. Okay, so Nolly, there's a thing that happens on the MLS that it will say, we know exactly when your contract has ended because it says listing agreement from this date to this date. It gives you a time. It will give you a specific time for how long your listing date is. The minute that listing date is over, there are people that we call cold calls. Real estate agents do this. I personally do not because I hate cold calling. But the minute your listing agreement is over, they know they have the right to call you now because they couldn't call you while your house was listed. That's against the rules. But once your house is no longer on the MLS, or that contract has ended, they want to call you to say, hey, look, this is my this is what I can offer to get your home sold fast. I don't know how to stop that. You could contact your local board in your area to see if that's something that you would like to have excluded from your MLS, because you don't want those phone calls. I know they're freaking annoying. I totally know it. I get it. Rick Smith says, why isn't there anyone in the wealthiest country in the world with some of the smartest people come up with a plan to stop the homeless situation? Rick, that is the $1 million question. And I'm going to be completely honest with many of you that have watched my stream knows this. I was part of an affordable housing initiative to help homeless people here in the Baton Rouge area and outside of Baton Rouge. I personally I had builders available. There were people that were willing to give up land. We had lots of fundraisers and benefits. We had lots of politicians that came in and shook hands, got their picture in the paper and even a news clip. And to this day, this was back in 2017, 18, when that started. Nothing has ever been done with it. They've collected a lot of money. I don't think the plan is necessarily to help anybody. I don't know why they don't want to fix the problem, but they genuinely do not. They know how to fix it. All these other countries that don't have an issue, they already know the first thing they need to do, because they know there's a litany of other issues that cause homelessness, drug use, blah, blah, blah. They know that, but they know that the first step to the solution is getting them into a warm bed. They know that, and they're unwilling to do it. I don't know. Because all the other countries that have it solved or nearly solved or at a very low level, that's the first thing they did. Was they said, okay, the first thing we need to do is give them a warm bed, and then we move on from there. But they don't want to do that. AI is great till Skynet launches the nukes. Oh, let's not talk about Skynet and that. Yep. Rick says medical bankruptcy is one of the fastest growing things happening. Debbie, yep. Medical bankruptcy is a real thing. It's a real thing. And like you can have the best insurance in the world, but insurance companies use AI now to deny people's medical claims. I saw one over the weekend where this girl had her baby in the hospital, and unfortunately her baby passed away in the hospital, and she was, she had a C-section, the whole 9 yards, but and they had done all these things to try to keep the baby alive but the baby passed away. The baby wasn't on the insurance yet because they hadn't called yet to put the baby on the insurance. So now she has hundreds of thousands of dollars of medical bills because her baby had passed away. Disgusting. And she's constantly getting denied. I mean, like, she couldn't do anything. She was laying in a hospital bed getting a C-section. She was knocked out cold, for 24 hours. And then to find out her baby had passed away, and then the insurance wasn't going to cover anything they used to help save that baby. I think it's a scam. That's another thing that feels like a scam. Yep. Yeah, Rick says the homeless situation in the U.S. is getting worse. Yes, it is. In rural areas especially. Yep. Debbie Brady says, have you smacked that like button yet? Are you subscribed? Thank you, Debbie Brady. You're amazing. You're amazing. I know a lot of people are watching the football game today, so I'm glad you're spending some time with me so we can discuss these issues. They're very important. But yeah. SB says the company I work for is pushing us to use AI. And AI is a tool. It's not the end all be all. Right? So there are things that the AI is great with, but it lies and it makes up stuff all the time. I was watching this guy. He's like, his boss can't make any decision unless he consults the AI first. And then the AI, I don't know if you've ever used it. It loves to gas you up. So whenever you tell it an idea, it always will say, that is the most fantastic idea ever. Let's get this ball rolling. These are all the things you need to do. And like, it's not putting in consideration, like if you do all these things in those steps, that has too many lines of breakdown. If something goes wrong, you're screwed, basically. But the AI told him it could be done, like Even a lot of companies that were first to be in the AI have rolled back their AI because they realized it isn't the end all be all. It isn't the perfect worker, because it's not. JW says people need homes, not corporations. Force all these companies to sell all their single family homes at market rates or below, and the problem will be much better. I get what you're saying, and I do think there is a place for some rental housing, right? But I think the corporations that do own corporate housing, I think that needs to stop. No longer can they do that. And they need to have a lot of regulations looking over their shoulder for the housing that they have, where they must have people coming out there inspecting those properties, making sure they're up to code, making sure that they're staying in line with the community itself. Because I'm telling you, in 10 years, you're going to see a lot of these houses look like total crap because private equity doesn't give a flying flip about any of it, none of it. And you're going to see a lot more people, because they have no oversight with a lot of these companies, you're going to see a lot more people having predatory lending practices or predatory rental practices used against them, to force them to pay more money for things they shouldn't have to because they're renting. That's why they're trying to loosen a lot of areas. If you look, they're trying to make it not as renter friendly. They're trying to give more power to the landlords than the renters. Now, I've seen it vice versa. It work both ways terribly. But I mean, it needs to be straight down the middle. And I think corporate investors that own these large amounts of homes, I'm talking 20 or more houses, need to have an eye on them, where they can't get away with the bull crap. That's what I say. Yep. I concur. Yep. Oh, TikTok is going to tell me that I have to put this puzzle piece in the section. So to keep it going. All right. Dana says, you just need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, y'all. Pull you up by your bootstraps for what, though? Exactly. You know what? To pay more for a house, with a high interest rate. Even if the interest rates were to go down, many areas, a $400,000 house. I mean, we're creeping into nearly $500,000 for a average starter home. That's what I mean. We're in that territory. How many people working a regular job could afford that a house? Not many. Even if the interest rate was at zero, right? Back in my day, I lived in Orlando, Florida, with my husband. He was at that time working in sales. We made very little money. I was big pregnant and found out this is probably the time for us to buy a house. And we bought our first house for $135,000. I was a hairdresser at the time. I was not making, buku dollars by any means. He wasn't making buku bucks. I think combined, we were making $65,000, maybe 60,000 combined. I mean, it was okay for the time, but we were able to buy a house because it was $135,000. Today, somebody working as a hairdresser and making, decent money, let's just say they're even making $50,000 and their spouse is making $50,000. They can't buy that $400,000 house. People that have regular jobs can't afford housing. And so there's no bootstraps to pull up in order to afford a house. There's nothing you can do. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. And there's no incentive for home builders to build more affordable housing. And in order for that to happen, there has to be tax incentives for home builders to build smaller, and they have to get more affordable land without the red tape that they have to go through to build a house on that land. So the housing developers need to be able to get the land ready for home builders even faster, not years, not 10 years like it takes in California, not the 5 years that it takes in other states. That part of it could be eliminated very quickly. What?
Polly Wally Golly says CT here, housing shortage crazy on TikTok.
Yeah, in Connecticut, the housing shortage is crazy. But, it all could be solved if they really wanted to solve it. But they just need to listen to the people that are truly in the trenches. I'm not talking about your track builders too, because those track builders have a different initiative that they want to get done in order for them to build more houses. They want to stop the regulations that they have to go through to build a quality, well-built home. And it doesn't incentivize them to do that. So they could build them faster if they didn't have an eagle eye looking over them. And they don't even really look over them like they should anyways, right? I don't want those to stop. I think they need more of those. I don't want them to stop the energy efficiency regulations, which they just pulled the plug on, which was in the big, beautiful bill. So PB says, absolute scammers, a paradise, and all protections being stripped away from with present crooks. Yeah. What were you going to say, Eddie?
I said, I do apologize. I was not saying no to you. I was actually saying no to one of your babies. Who's trying to climb me.
Yeah. If anybody knows, I have 7 cats. 7 cats and 3 dogs. It's like a zoo over here. So if you guys have any questions, make sure you put them in the chat. But all news is not all news isn't bad news, by the way. If you're in the market to buy a house, interest rates are down, and I'm interested to see on Monday if mortgage interest rates will come down even more. I genuinely said, and I've said it many times, I thought mortgage interest rates were gonna cap out, like we were gonna see in closer to 8. That's what I thought. But the way things are looking right now, looks like that's not going to happen. There you goes my prediction. This is my crystal ball. I should have never done it. My prediction was wrong. Who knows? We still have to the end of the year. I could be right at the end, but I don't know. It doesn't look like it's heading that way. Tommy says, I just sold my house for $322,000 and bought a house for $157,000. 580 miles away. Same pay at the new job. I literally took the money and ran. Good for you, Tommy. Good for you. My husband and I are looking into an area. It won't cost us that much less for a house, but it will open up an opportunity for my kids to be able to buy a home. So I'm really excited for that. Sterling says, wow, a cat lady who's married. Eddie must be a special man. I will tell you what, Eddie's the biggest cat dude in the whole entire world. He and I both were like, ew, cats, yuck. But we got one for our daughter, and the whole family fell in love with this cat. And I'm like, I want a cat. And then Eddie's like, I want a cat. So we each got ourselves our own cat. But then we felt bad because our cats needed a friend, right? So our cats needed a cat. So then our cats each got a cat, so they would have a cat friend. We lost our minds during the pandemic, and the only thing that made us feel better were our cats. So Eddie is the best cat dad, though. You should see he's on top of that whole litter box. You should see what he feeds them. I mean, he's got the oils, he's got the supplements, he has the wet food galore. I mean, these cats are taken care of. Like if I die, I want to come back as one of my cats and have Eddie take care of me, because those cats eat awesome. So, I don't know how that related to housing, but one day I'm going to bring one of I have my cat, my little special Soapy, and I'll bring her in here. I'll bring a litter box out here and have her come out here and hang out with us, because my Soapy is the best cat. Maybe I'll do it inside the house so you guys can see the cats. I'll have them come in, because they'll hear me talking in my office inside the house, and you'll see each one of them come through. We're going to do that next week, so you guys can see my animals. my menagerie, is that the word? Menagerie, is that the right word, Eddie? Of cats. So anyways,
me?
Huh? What?
You're asking me if that's the right word?
Oh, I know. So, all right. Well, I'm glad that we were able to report on some good news this week in the housing market. So we had interest rates coming down. We're going to keep an eye on it next week to see if it comes down even more. We were able to have that Protection Act for home buyers. So that way, when you're filling out those forms on the internet, you don't have to worry about them calling you in a million times. If you have those phone calls coming in, get a hold of every single name that's called you and see what you can do about it, because you might be able to get some money, because it's a law now. They can't do it. And then there's going to be a declaration of a housing crisis in the fall. They say they may. I don't know what that even means. And there was a lot of words, not a lot of like implementation of what they were saying is going to happen with the calling of a crisis. Like, we didn't know. But yeah, the poll results are in, and they said, have you heard about the housing emergency? 41% said yes, 51% said no, and 8% said they were not sure. I was interested to see how many people had heard about this housing emergency that was declared by the Trump administration. It was the first I had heard of it was a couple days ago. So I was interested if everybody else is reading the same headlines I am. Sterling says, so you and Eddie could be cool cat. Yep. You could build a tiny home, tiny cat house. I don't put my cats outside. They all stay inside. Natalie says, question, when purchasing a modular home, do you first need to find the land you want on it, or they provide you with the land? We will never do an HOA again. I would tell you this. I would try to find your own land yourself. And I would do please watch my last video, because I know I'm talking about manufactured housing, which is like mobile homes. It's the same for modular homes. I would find your own land first, and I would get your price out estimates for all your utilities and upgrades and everything that you would need for your land before they actually build your modular home. The only thing I wouldn't do ahead of time is have them pour the pad, because that's different. Have the modular home company do that. But all your utilities, internet, all that, have that land prepared before you have them put the house on there. And I would work with your own individual lender. I would not work with a lender that's on the lot with the modular home company. You want to have control of it. You don't want the company to control your money and what you get done to your land. So just saying, that's what I would do. All right. Erica said, don't forget the dogs. I'll see if they'll come in. Hopefully the puppy doesn't come in. He's a monster. Laura says, my dog seems much happier having a squeaky toy than having a puppy. Yeah. Well, I didn't want the poppy. This is Eddie's poppy. We call it his name's Buddy, but it's my daughter and I call him Poppy. The poppy. The poppy. So I want to say thank you to all of our moderators today. That always keeps our chat very clean and always keeps the chat running and smooth. I appreciate every single one of you. If you need to get a hold of me this week, you can always go to my website, KristinaSmallhorn.com. Click on one of the pink buttons, fill out the form, and we will have a discussion about your real estate needs. If you want to just share this as a podcast with any of your friends and family, go to anywhere you listen to podcasts. Look for Kristina Smallhorn, Real Estate for Everyone, and you can share this episode tomorrow. Tomorrow will be on there. Eddie always puts it up there on Monday morning. I want to say, I hope you have a fantastic week and that we have more good news and less unprecedented times, because Kristina here is freaking tired of unprecedented times. If you're watching this on the replay, you're going to want to watch these videos over here next. All right, everybody. Love ya. Mean it. See you next week. Bye.